them having to pump that to be able to mine in the bottom of the hole. That's the dewatering process, and in that process, there's a multitude of issues that come up on a scale that we can't even wrap our minds around, really. But part of it is the fact that that water isn't just let's remove good, clean water and reintroduce it to the river. That water is going to be contaminated as a result of all of those rocks and the volatilities in those rocks having been disturbed. So that's where your heavy metals, your sulfates, your mercury, all that stuff is in play. And so it isn't as simple as let's just get rid of this water, dump it in Tyler Forks, it'll be in Lake Superior before we know it. The toxic plume is there with that, so they have to somehow, at some point consider, and of course our job is going to be to stop all of this, but hold them accountable as they try to roll this stuff out. What are they going to do with all of that? In addition to the impacts they're going to have on the amount of water around here. So it's going to be a huge challenge. And again, it's not very encouraging when the head of the regulatory arm of the state of Wisconsin has a big smile on her face about a water volume question. How much will a mining company use? And she starts giggling along with the two other experts, mining experts. They look at each other, and then she, smugly she steps up and says, a lot, a real lot. He, I'm so cute as she steps back in her seat. That was probably the most appalling and most alarming moment I think I've probably ever had in this whole mining fight, with everything else I had to wrap my mind around. Watching that little display from that source was unbelievable. So, I'll just say this too as a talking point that to just kind of get you thinking. The other thing that's happening right now is GTAC has obviously been in the media dismissing the physical reality of mineral asbestos up in the Penokees. In case you're not aware of why they're doing that, I think, at least in my mind, one of the reasons is rooted in the very law that they wrote here in Wisconsin. Bob Seitz, to this day, Tom Fitz, Marcia DeJournerud, University of Lawrence, the Wisconsin Geological Service, the DNR, everybody has confirmed the presence of mineral asbestos, a very carcinogenic rock. Bob Seitz is still in the media saying it's debated, and they still are on the record with the DNR saying they don't expect to find it in the ore or in the Penokees up there. Highly unlikely that they'll have to deal with it. Why is that happening? How could a mining company be so blatant in their denial of physical reality? I think it's really rooted in the fact that in the mining law, the mining company is going to be legally bound to prepare an environmental impact statement, and I think this is the way it's ruled if I remember correctly, for any known negative environmental impacts. And so that word known becomes a part of the shell game, a part of that dance of public relations that is really a dance of life and death and sickness for us as people who live here. Where do you see playing out? Mineral asbestos, right? We don't expect to find it, it ain't there, there's one. So that's one shell, you're moving that around, and there's a reason for that. If they admit the physical reality, if they admit the truth, and we know from Tom Fitz's in the documentary that's going around that GTAC does know the truth on asbestos, but if they admit that publicly, they are bound by law now to describe a full scenario of environmental impact statement related to that particular issue. And when you get into an environmental impact statement, saying things like, as you're parading in front of Leslie Cole, Sergeant County Board, there ain't going to be that much asbestos. We don't think it's going to be a problem. That ain't going to fly. You have the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA and everybody else sitting there that's going to want to know exactly what are we dealing with in terms of how much, what types of substances and all of that. The mining company does not want to have to describe asbestos. But it's worse than just that, because as many of you probably know, they're priding themselves on their 3 or 4 core samples they drilled, which again I think was probably just posturing for the public. They're sitting on how many? Almost 250 core samples of that particular mountainside there, and the generalized area. As a collection historic core samples that they're not discussing. And everybody, I think, understands the word proprietary as a business, as business jargon. But the fact that they're still talking like we need to collect the science and we will collect the science. Don't believe all of those posers like Tom Fitz and Marshall Bajorner who spent their lives as geologists in the Penokees. We just got here from Florida and we are the experts, right? So as they pose and try to capture the science and push everything else off as inferior, the reality that's still sitting there unspoken and really unchallenged is the fact that GTAC could in real time paint a picture of what that mountainside looks like from a core sample perspective right now, today. Not, oh, we need to continue to collect some data on all of those GTAC talking points. That's sitting right now in storage. And I would say this, Tim Myers and whatever other geologists they hired are probably poring over them and have been poring over those core samples for a long time and know exactly what's in the mountain right now. But that's the part of this, another part of that shell game of not disclosing the physical realities. And so how does that play out when you got the state of Wisconsin? I'm in a mining consultation meeting with Scott Gunderson, number 2 in the DNR, Kathy Stepp, number 1 in the DNR, and Ann Coakley, the head of the regulatory arm of the DNR. And Kathy Stepp grabs her cheerleader kind of garb and says, my job here is to help my team do the very best job they can do and work to get them the resources they need to be successful. And I found that to be so interesting because I just got done drilling with Ann Coakley about the core samples, and her response to me was, we have requested the core samples repeatedly from GTAC. They will not turn those over to us. So the DNR, when you think of Ann Coakley and her staff, they want those core samples. They want to know what's in the mountain. They're requesting that directly to the mining company. The mining company's going, don't worry about it. And so I hear Kathy Stepp talk about how she's there to, make sure her team is successful. And I just asked her in that consultation. So that's really interesting. I said, I think that's wonderful that you carry that kind of spirit for your team, getting them the resources they need. I go, you obviously just heard Ms. Coakley say that she has requested at least 4 or 5 times, and in writing, those core samples from GTAC. I'm like, Secretary Stepp, have you ever stepped in to facilitate that process? Have you ever stepped in to push the mining company and demand, as the state of Wisconsin DNR, who's in charge of protecting the public, that those core samples need to be turned over so everybody can see what's in that mountainside? And she said, we're not bound by law to do that.
Wow.
And I had a couple of other comments that I shared with her that were probably out of frustration, but I didn't swear. I didn't swear. Sure. I didn't try. Yeah.